Hey, listeners, we will keep this quick. All we want for Hanukkah and Christmas this year is you.
That's right, you. A sponsor of the Foretop.
Yes, folks, sponsor the Four Top to get your brand's message into the ear cavities of our audience of wine insiders.
It's the gift that keeps on giving because our content is evergreen.
Just like Christmas. Email Zoe at theforetop.org or reach out to us on social media to learn more.
It was basically the same price. It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, folks, we're coming to you in medias res as Ruby explains her frustration at spending cocktail prices for mocktails. We just hit record. Ruby, take it back for the listeners. What are we talking about here?
Okay, I was at a cocktail bar over the weekend. I don't want to name it because it's a favorite spot of mine. And I was looking at their mocktail menu, and their mocktails are essentially the same price as their cocktails, but don't contain alcohol in them. And I just think that that's so ridiculous. For example, a grapefruit Collins, which is grapefruit, lemon, rosemary, and soda, is $13.
Wow.
So no alcohol or fake alcohol, just juices.
No alcohol. It's not like with the seed lip or Gia or any of those other like non-alc kind of things inside of it. It's just the juice and some herbs.
Those are like airport prices.
It's honestly insane. And I mean, it's crazy that the cocktails themselves are also like $16, $17. But I just don't know how restaurants and bars are justifying these mocktail prices.
I think there's an opening here for the wine industry. Folks, it's cheaper to drink wine than a mocktail.
Well, I mean,
Well, that
mocktails
might
do.
that might defeat the purpose of having a mocktail.
I love the idea of a mocktail. I love the idea of like a fancy drink that doesn't have any alcohol in it. I just don't think that it needs to cost that much. And I wonder, I mean, maybe we have listeners that have an idea of why they cost that much. Maybe they're like specialty herb blends or something, but I just find it ridiculous to pay that much for essentially juice and soda.
The mixologist still has to mix,
That's
It's
true.
true.
Gotta pay for their time.
I think instead of looking up why it costs that much, we should just continue to rage, because that sounds
Oh.
at least more fun
Mhm.
than
I
looking
do
it up.
love raging.
Yeah.
Well, we have much to vent about. You guys wanted to talk about vegan and gluten-free stuff.
Oh, yeah, over the holiday, I had this problem. It's like, how hard is it to have one vegetarian thing on your menu? Just one.
That's not a salad. That's not a salad.
That's not a salad for, like, a teenager who needs a lot of food. So, at one restaurant, we ended up having to, like, basically special order a bunch of just a pile of grilled vegetables for this 13-year-old family member who eats a lot because he is a growing boy, and I don't know, I just was kind of like, "I don't understand. Your menu says everything is farm fresh, it lists all the farms you source from," you know.
I'm actually really
True.
surprised by that. I think that like every restaurant I go to in New York has really good vegetarian options and also gluten-free options.
I was just in New York 2 weekends ago. We actually did not have a great time. Sorry, backing up. My wife is celiac. We had a little bit of a hard time.
Yeah, it kinda depends on where you go.
Mm,
The funny thing is if
yeah.
you get a great gluten-free, like, pizza crust or bread, you're like, "This is better than gluten." Like, a really good millet
No,
flour.
Catherine.
I'm gonna stop you
No.
there, Catherine.
No,
It's
it's
just that you
not.
haven't
Oh,
been
man.
eating gluten in a while.
No.
Can confirm that that is not true.
Yeah,
I have had
sorry.
amazing experiences with millet, and I'm gonna stand by it.
That's so cute. Okay.
As someone who eats gluten but has to often eat gluten-free stuff because my wife's celiac, it ain't the same. But it can be good.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, anyway, I do stand by the vegetarian request. Restaurants, look, vegetables are good with wine, and everybody likes to have a vegetarian entree once in a while. Just include one on your menu. It's not that hard.
And lower your mocktail prices.
And lower your mocktail prices. Trump touts tequila tariffs. Chefs begin to repeal the eels in their meals. Drinks Retail needs to bring on the fun. And Alder Yarrow talks old vines. These are the wine news stories we're following this week on your favorite wine news podcast, The Four Top. I am Catherine Cole here with Nick Toole and Ruby Welkovich. All right, Nick, Ruby listeners, courtesy of reporter Sarah Neisch, I think that's how that's pronounced, of the drinks business, we have a new explanation for slipping wine sales, and it is, drumroll please, the retail experience just isn't fun anymore.
Ugh, it is so boring. But yeah, a new report from the UK based OC&C Strategy Consultants finds that consumers want shopping to be more fun and not as functional.
Yep, the report highlights that Gen Z shoppers are twice as likely as baby boomers to name fun to shop as a reason to frequent a retailer. To bring in young shoppers, you need to create a quote, sense of excitement and discovery. I think this is true.
I was
I
gonna
don't know
say,
if you guys have ever gone into like a Glossier store, but I will maybe include some photos in our like weekly socials. But I think that it's really fun to have like an experiential place to shop.
Yeah, or
I
like
would agree with
Lush.
that.
Lush also, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I pretty much buy everything online these days. And so when I do go into a store, if I have a really positive experience, I definitely will make an effort to come back because, yeah, it's different.
I do think that that adds to it, because we're shopping online, like the in-store experience needs to be something special.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
know that consumers are spending more on leisure activities than on retail these days. We've reported many times on how younger consumers value experiences over things. So if one makes the act of buying things an experience, you are adding value.
Now, the report had some suggestions for beverage retailers hoping to make shopping fun. For example, incorporating eclectic product ranges, gamification of the purchase journey, and hyper personalization. So, if you read between the lines there, it sounds like a lot of this would take a lot of investing. So, maybe, larger retailers can swing it, but local bottle shops may not be in the best position to gamify shopping.
I don't know. What about a good old fashioned like IRL game like hide and seek or I don't know, like for example, okay, I just read this week about a coffee shop in Massachusetts that is offering a free coffee to any customer who enters the shop while dancing. Guys,
Okay.
you do not need a sales and marketing team and huge budget. All you have to do is just play some dance tunes on your stereo, whether it's a tasting room or a wine shop, and tell people they'll get a free glass if they dance their way in. Just channel your inner wedding DJ and you've got it.
That is so cute. I would never enter that shop dancing. Personally, just saying. But we can also look at what's happening online. There's a California based wine business called Underground Cellar that offers surprise bottle upgrades based on what's in your shopping cart. So we can take a look at that.
Their homepage is just like, feel the thrill of your bottles being swapped out with rare cult wines on every purchase. That sounds pretty nice.
I feel badly for Dow, which they're using
Yeah.
as on their homepage right now. They're using a bottle of Dow as like, you're only paying $29 for this piece of crap, and you might get a bottle of Tignanello if you play your cards right. This is
Yeah.
weird. This or Opus One, Jesus.
I would hate this because I'm ordering my bottle of wine that I know I want to order. Like, I don't want to be
Right.
surprised.
And also, are you serious they're swapping in Harlan? I seriously doubt this. I'm sorry, Underground Cellar, but I seriously doubt you are, like, sending surprise bottles of Harlan to people who pay $29 for a bottle of Dow. I no, it's not. I this is what? No.
But I guess if the point is to increase retail sales, if someone thinks maybe they would send a bottle of Harlan, then they might buy more.
Okay, so guys, maybe we should explain what this website seems to be doing. I guess what they're saying is you pay a certain amount and you just don't know what you'll receive, or
Yeah, you buy a bottle of Dow and then they might reward you by swapping it out for some Harlan.
okay, just it's just weird.
I just don't like the swapping aspect. Like, include it in my order.
Yeah.
Just give me the thing that I also ordered.
All right, let's move on to another example then. So there's a Japanese electronics company that matured two wines to the sound of a video game soundtrack. There's some fun retail opportunities right there.
I think if you told me a wine had been cellared to the unparalleled vocals of Taylor Swift, I'd be more likely to buy
Okay, this is going sideways, guys. Bottom line,
it.
folks, if you want to sell wine, it sounds like it's time to ramp up the fun. So, yeah, gamify it, make it fun. I don't know, play some tunes, but Ruby's not going to dance for you.
Will not dance.
Well, guys, guess what's officially old after it turns 35?
Most professional athletes, unless you're LeBron James.
Or a female actor?
Oh, that hurts to think about. But no, actually, I'm happy to announce this one. I'm happy to announce that there is a new international standard for oldness when it comes to grapevines, and the magic number is 35.
Say what?
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about. Those wine labels that say old vines or like veal vines or whatever in French.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, until now, there was no official definition for these terms. Winemakers were just like stamping them on their labels willy nilly with no oversight. But those days will soon be over because a couple of weeks ago, the International Organization of Vine and Wine, or OIV, adopted a resolution to recognize that, quote, an old grapevine is a single plant officially documented to be 35 years or older.
Well, it was about damn time.
Yeah.
Ruby's really passionate about this. But we need a friend to phone to learn more about this. So I'm thinking we call Alder Yarrow. Our listeners may know Alder as a columnist for jancisrobinson.com or for his own vinography blog.
But he also co founded the Old Vine Registry at oldvineregistry.org. So let's give him a call and learn more about why 35 is the magic number.
Beep boop 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 beep boop boop. Bring, bring.
Alder Yarrow, welcome to the Foretop. Could you start by telling us about the Old Vine Registry? How did that get started?
So, about 12 years ago, Jancis Robinson and one of her colleagues, Tam Curran, decided that they wanted to start keeping track of old vineyards that they came across in their writings, travels, criticism. And so they just started building a little spreadsheet because they thought old vine vineyards are worth keeping track of. And so they did that for about 10 years, actually. And a couple years ago, it had grown to about an 1,800 line spreadsheet. At which point,
Wow.
Jancis said, look, this is kind of getting unwieldy and it isn't very useful to anybody. And so what we really need to do is turn this into a website, and she put out basically a public call for anybody that might be able to help them do that. And I said, hi, Jancis, remember me? I actually know how to do that sort of thing. That's what I get paid to do when I'm not writing for you. And I said, I'm going to volunteer to do this if we can pull together the money and the resources to do it. And we managed to go out and get somebody to give us the money. Jackson Family Wines gave us a chunk of money to start with. And so I designed and project managed and helped build this Old Vine Registry, which is now a web-enabled database that is publicly accessible to anybody around the world to both view and research old vines, but also to submit new ones. And so now we've got about 3,500 vineyards around the world in like 39 different countries. And we're trying to essentially build the Wikipedia for old vine vineyards around the world.
Wow, that's very cool.
Okay, I'm looking at your website now and using the search function, which is crazy. You can filter by age range, and I'm viewing vineyards older than 155 years old. There's a lot of them. There's even a 601-year-old vineyard here.
Yeah, there's a lot of old vineyards around the world. Some of them 200, 300 years old. As you start to get past, 200, you're really getting into everybody's best estimate territory because records and, you obviously don't have the person still alive that planted it. But yeah, there are a number of vineyards and in some cases, really spectacular single vines that we can date back to 400 something years old.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. And they're still producing fruit.
Yeah, in fact, there's one in Slovenia that like grows all over this whole house. And it's like this massive vine that's been there with this house for, 400 years or whatever. And they still, make a little bit of wine from it.
I love that. That's so cool.
So there are vines up to 601 years old, it sounds like. So how did 35 become the magic number, the magic age for a vineyard to be considered, or a vine to be considered old?
Well, before it became enshrined in sort of official European law, which just happened a few weeks ago, the 35-year number came from essentially the global average for when commercial vineyards are uprooted and replanted. So pretty typically, after 35 years, any commercial vineyard will have been uprooted and replanted. And so if you make it one day past that, essentially you've made it into old age when it comes to being grapevines. So that's the statistic for around the world. And so we decided, all right, well, if they're on average uprooted at 35, then anything older than that is technically old. As I mentioned, the OIV just passed a resolution a couple weeks ago officially defining what old vines mean from a European standpoint, and they've chosen that 35-year cutoff as well.
So there are a handful, at least, organizations like the Old Vine Registry. What's the difference between what you're doing and, say, like the Old Vine Conference or the Old Vine Charter, those other kind of similar organizations?
So there are a lot of organizations focused on supporting, promoting, and evangelizing old vine vineyards around the world, and specifically the wines that they make. There aren't very many actual registries of old vines. So the Old Vine Registry is a database of old vine vineyards, full stop. And we attempt to be a global database, so in every wine producing country in the world, hopefully one day, and for all vines. There are a few other projects that catalog vines in specific ways. So there's something called the California Historic Vineyard Society, and they keep track of vineyards only in California that are 50 years and older. So that's
Hmm.
their focus, and they certify those vineyards. So they do a lot of legwork to essentially establish that for sure these vineyards are at least 50 years old. But that's only focused on California, for instance. There is a program in Italy that attempts to catalog old vines in Italy. And so we're hoping to become something of a superset of all of these different projects. And the Old Vine Conference, that's a nonprofit based in the UK, is the parent organization for the database, for the registry. So
Hmm.
when we decided to build this thing, we needed it to live somewhere, to be owned by somebody, and that nonprofit organization seemed like the best choice to do that. And so they said, sure, we'll be the umbrella, under which you can sit the Old Vine Registry.
So
Very
now
cool.
that we have this registry and the OIV has adopted this resolution, will there be some sort of regulation around being able to use the term old vines on wine labels? Because nowadays you can just put it on there if you want to. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, right?
That is a great question, Catherine. And certainly, I know you and I and lots of people who've been writing about wine for a long time would really love for there to be a bit more stringency around the use of old vines, for sure, because people just throw it on the label willy nilly. So I think certainly this definition is the first step towards that. But then that has to then sort of filter down to the appellation rules, around Europe and around the world to get that codified. But I think hopefully one day that will be the case, and people will have to certify that their vineyards are old enough to put that on the label.
What are some characteristics that unify these vineyards? Like, is there a secret sauce for a long life if you're a vine?
Ooh, uh, I don't know how to answer that specifically, other than to say, most of the grapevines in Europe, and indeed many around the world, all died off towards the beginning of the 20th century because of the phylloxera infestation, right? So this horrible little louse that was imported accidentally from America to Europe basically wiped out 80 something percent of the vineyards all over Europe, and then many other places around the world, except in really sandy soils or some geographically isolated places. And so that's one answer to your question, is like, well, in order to have survived that, what was essentially a grapevine apocalypse, vines had to be in very specific types of soils or very specifically isolated from other places that allowed them to survive that long. We've got some great old vines in Australia. So that's one ingredient. Beyond that, really, to answer the question generically, they need somebody who values them and takes care of them. And ultimately, that's the impetus for creating this registry and for any of these old vine programs or organizations around the world, which is to say that unless we point a spotlight on these things and tell people why they're valuable as troves of genetic heritage, as cultural heritage, as all these different reasons why old vines should be thought of as valuable resources for the wine industry, if we don't spotlight them and make people care about them and make people want to buy the wines that are made from them, these vineyards won't survive. They'll be uprooted and replaced with apartment blocks or with younger, more productive, commercially viable grapevines that won't yield wines as good or as complex as they used to be, or are simply just, we're going to lose that genetic heritage.
Speaking of that, so that people can get involved or learn more, how should they do that?
Well, they certainly are welcome to submit the old vine vineyards that they come across in their travels, drinking, studies, adventures to the old vine registry. Make sure we don't have it already, but if you find one that we don't have, anybody can submit. It's just like Wikipedia, right? So this is a whole crowdsourced, effort. So we'll take submissions from anyone, anywhere, anytime. But I think what old vines really need is they need advocacy and support, and that's what that parent organization of the Old Vine Conference does. They put on conferences and webinars and events around the world supporting old vine vineyards, the producers who farm them and make wines from them, and the wines that are produced. And so buying old vine wines is a great way to support old vine vineyards around the world, becoming a member of the Old Vine Conference, and generally keeping an eye out for the special wines that come from these really special places.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Alder Yarrow. That was so illuminating, and you made me just really excited to taste more delicious wines from old vines. So thank you. Thanks for the work you've done.
My pleasure. It was fun.
All right, time for our weekly segment, Truth Social or Dare, where we read posts on Truth Social to our audience.
I don't recall okaying this as a segment on the Four Top, but
Up first, a post by President elect Donald Trump from last Monday. It reads on, I'm not going to do a voice, by the way. On
Thank
January
you.
20th, I will sign all necessary documents to charge Mexico and Canada a 25% tariff. That is tariff with a capital T for reasons unbeknownst to me on all products coming into the United States. And it's ridiculous open borders also capitalized. Again, not sure why. This tariff, capitalized, will remain in effect until such time as drugs, capitalized, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop this invasions, capitalized, of our country, capitalized. So anyway, there's the segment. Just wanted to read that Truth Social post for you guys.
and
Oh,
it's a wrap.
good. I think our listeners would appreciate a little more context here. So we've turned to Pete O'Connell over at VinePair, who points out that tariffs of this size could significantly impact the tequila, mezcal, and Canadian whiskey industries.
Yeah, in O'Connell's article, it lets us know that last year the US imported $4.6 billion worth of tequila and $108 million worth of mezcal from Mexico. Likewise, we imported $537 million worth of Canadian spirits. So take all those big, huge numbers and slap on 25%, and you have an even more gigantic, ginormous number. As we discussed with Harman Skurnick of the U.S. Wine Trade Alliance recently, those tariffs would be paid by the U.S. importer, not the exporter. So those costs will be passed on to wholesalers, retailers, and ultimately consumers in the United States.
Yeah, some are speculating that the U.S. hospitality industry will be the most impacted, and I would just add to a growing list of significant problems that industry is facing, including inflation and a decrease in overall alcohol consumption.
Yeah, things are already shifting since Trump. What is the verb? Is it posted a truth message? Whatever it is you do on Truth Social about these tariffs. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau made a hasty visit to Mar-a-Lago this past Friday to meet with Trump and described their long dinner meeting as, quote, an excellent conversation.
Impossible.
Mexican Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum also spoke with Trump last week, and she says she is confident that the US and Mexico will avert a tariff war.
Yeah, it seems to me that it's likely that the whole 25% tariffs thing was a bluff, considering that Trump campaigned on lowering costs for everyday Americans, and a huge tariff with two of our largest trade partners would do the opposite. But then again, he talked about tariffs a lot while he campaigned, so who knows? If only we had a window into that man's interesting head.
I'd rather not. I do have a question before we put the story to bed. We mentioned tequila, mezcal, and whiskey, but what about Canadian and Mexican wine? Why aren't we worried about those imports?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm sure those would be affected as well. We just actually import very little wine from Canada and Mexico, although they both produce wonderful wines. But I think the issue here is more that the importers and wholesalers will be stuck with the bills for those tariffs. They're bringing in wine as well as liquor. And so they're going to have to figure out a way for their numbers to work. That means prices are likely going to go up across the board.
So, this is a bit of a stretch from our usual subject matter, which is, in case you've missed it somehow, wine, but it's about food and restaurants.
Yeah, it's a little tangential, but you guys, I was browsing the Italian newspaper La Repubblica this week, and I read about a prominent Italian celebrity chef, Mauro Colagreco, and his campaign drawing attention to the plight of the lowly eel. And I was really taken by it.
The eel?
Yeah, like the snake that swims. Okay, it's not super attractive, kind of hideous, I know.
Oh.
But you guys, I just didn't realize this. I try to be a very sensitive diner, and I did not realize the eel is in deep trouble. And according to Chef Cola Greco and, the internet, I've learned a lot this week. Who knew?
Yeah, according to The Guardian, the European eel is a critically endangered fish whose population has declined by more than 95% since the 1980s. So, European chefs have been pressuring one another to remove it from menus.
I actually don't like eel in my sushi, so this works out for me. But I am on the Nature Conservancy website and reading that American eels are also endangered and populations are at an all-time low.
Yeah, exactly. So, Ruby, I'm glad you don't enjoy unagi. I actually have enjoyed unagi from time to time, but maybe it's time to stop ordering it. And in Europe, eel is actually a super traditional menu item, but it sounds like it's got to go. And I just thought our, culinary minded listeners might be interested in learning this.
Unagi always makes me think of that Friends episode with Ross doing this. Do you know what I'm talking about? The self-defense episode
No.
where he's calling it unagi.
Could have really used you in trivia last week.
Oh, yeah. I'm great at trivia. I'll send you guys the link. I know what we need. We need a cute eel, like a little stuffed animal eel, and then
Oh.
nobody will want to eat it, kind of like baby carrot.
Oh, yeah. I think we need to post about baby carrot. Yeah, guys. So save the eels. No more eel for dinner.
It's time for this week's question of the week. So last week we asked folks, what are you bringing to the table this Thanksgiving? And we did specify that we meant wine in the caption, but that did not stop folks from providing some very interesting answers.
Yeah. So Instagram user JimmyMac54 is bringing this quote: sparkling presence and fascinating conversation skills. Love it, Jimmy.
Lulu Bornacelli or Bornicelli is bringing simply gossip. That sounds nice and juicy to me.
Love that. And Beach Bluesman is bringing a carrot souffle, which sounds delicious, but is not wine.
I think if I had to pair wine with some of these things, I think I'd pair a nice sparkling rosé with my gossip and maybe something with a little more booze and more body with Jimmy Mac 54 because I'm worried he'd be a real talker.
Yeah. Okay. I see that. Well, so what should we ask our listeners this week, guys? Let me think. How about what should retailers do to make wine shopping more fun?
Love that question. Look out for that across our social media pages and let us know your thoughts.
Well, now it's time for our dessert course. And why don't we bring Alder Yarrow back in? Because I think he might have an excellent dessert for us to finish this episode off with. Alder, what do you got for us? What's for dessert?
I recommend wine for dessert. I just got back from spending a couple weeks in Australia, and a big chunk of that time was spent in the Mornington Peninsula, tiny little area south of Melbourne. And it's Pinot Noir and Chardonnay country. And what I'm recommending we all drink for dessert is the Moraduk Estate McIntyre Vineyard Pinot Noir. It's just this light cherry, raspberry, juicy, yummy goodness. Lots of acidity, and anyway, put a smile on your face.
I am Googling it right now.
Yeah, that sounds
thirsty.
awesome.
And that's spelled Mooroooduc.
You got it.
Cool. I want to try it.
All right, well, folks, you heard the recommendation. Go out and get some of that Pinot Noir. I'm not going to butcher the name right now, but you heard Alder say it.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, this has been the Four Top Podcast. I am our executive producer, Catherine Cole.
I'm our producer, Nick Toole.
I'm media and design manager Ruby Welkovich.
Keelan King is the composer and performer of our theme music.
Hey y'all, this week we are asking you to do something a little different. We want you to share your favorite Four Top episode with a friend, any friend.
Yes, you can grab the episode link from your favorite podcast platform like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or our website at theforetop.org.
Well, swimming with the Italian eels, this is Catherine signing out.
From the dark at 4 p.m. world of Portland, Maine, this is Nick signing out.
And sipping on a $15 soda, this is Ruby signing out. Stay safe out there, and thanks for listening.